The chilled autumn wind carried whispers of disapproval through Gunnison, Colorado, as Olivia Zimmerman stepped out onto the wooden boardwalk of Fairfield's general store. At 32 years of age, the townsfolk had long ago designated her a spinster, a label that clung to her like the dust on her hemline after a day's work. They said a woman her age had missed her chance, that she was too old for marriage now. But Olivia had learned to wear their judgment like armor, polished and impenetrable. It was 1883, and Gunnison was still establishing itself as more than just another mining town nestled in the Colorado mountains. The railroad had arrived only 3 years prior, bringing with it a surge of new settlers, businessmen, and fortune seekers. Olivia had arrived 5 years before that, when the town was little more than a collection of log structures and tents. She'd built her millinery shop from the ground up, becoming one of the few successful female business owners in the territory. Olivia adjusted her plain bonnet as she made her way down the street, her arms laden with packages of fabric, ribbons, and wire frames for her latest hat designs. Her shop, Zimmerman's Millinery, occupied a modest storefront on the eastern end of Main Street, sandwiched between the barber shop and the telegraph office. Miss Zimmerman, called Mrs. Thornberry, the banker's wife, from across the street. "Did you hear about the dance this Saturday at the schoolhouse? The Ladies' Aid Society is organizing it to raise funds for books." Olivia nodded politely. "Yes, I've heard. I'm donating 2 of my finest hats for the raffle." Mrs. Thornberry's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "How generous. Though I expect you'll be attending as well. Perhaps this time you'll find a suitable companion." Her emphasis on suitable carried the weight of the entire town's opinion that Olivia should lower her standards and accept any man willing to take on a woman of her advanced years. "Perhaps," Olivia replied noncommittally. She had long ago tired of explaining that her single status was not for lack of proposals. She'd received several over the years, but none from men she could envision sharing her life with. The miners who sought her hand typically wanted a housekeeper more than a wife, and the businessmen who occasionally expressed interest couldn't fathom that she might wish to maintain her independence and her shop. As Mrs. Thornberry continued on her way, Olivia caught sight of a commotion near the livery stable. A group had gathered around a man she'd never seen before. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and unlike many of the miners and townsmen, impeccably groomed despite the trail dust that clung to his clothing. Even from a distance, she could see the confident way he held himself as he conversed with Mr. Jenkins, the livery owner. Curiosity piqued, Olivia continued to her shop, unlocking the door and breathing in the familiar scent of felt, straw, and the faint trace of lavender oil she used to scent her workroom. She placed her packages on the counter and moved to the window, adjusting a display hat while stealing another glance at the newcomer. He was heading in her direction now, leading a magnificent chestnut stallion. His gait was unhurried yet purposeful, and as he drew closer, she could make out more details: the weathered tan of his skin, the slight crinkles at the corners of his eyes suggesting a man who smiled often, and the quality of his clothing that spoke of success rather than struggle. Olivia quickly busied herself with arranging ribbons when the bell above her door chimed. "Good morning," came a deep voice with a hint of a southern drawl. "I understand this is the finest millinery shop in all of Gunnison County." Olivia turned, composing her features into a professional smile. "You've been misinformed, sir. It's the only millinery shop in Gunnison County." The man's laugh was rich and genuine. "Then by default it must be the finest." He removed his hat, revealing thick brown hair with strands of silver at the temples. "Isaac Prescott, madam. New owner of the Double R Ranch out on the western edge of the valley." Olivia Zimmerman, she replied, extending her hand in a businesslike manner. Proprietress of this humble establishment. Instead of the quick handshake she expected, Isaac gently took her hand and bowed slightly over it. "A pleasure, Miss Zimmerman." "Mrs.," she corrected automatically, then flushed. "That is, I'm not married, but Miss seems rather juvenile for a woman of my years." "And what years might those be?" he asked, his eyes a warm hazel that reminded her of autumn leaves twinkling with amusement. 32, she answered, lifting her chin slightly in defiance. Most men looked elsewhere once they learned her age, seeking younger, more marriageable women, but Isaac merely nodded appreciatively. "Perfectly aged, like fine wine." The unexpected compliment caught her off guard, and she fumbled for a response. "What can I help you with today, Mr. Prescott? Are you looking for a hat for yourself, or perhaps a gift?" "A gift," he confirmed. "My sister will be joining me from Boston next month. I thought a new hat might help her feel more at home in Colorado territory." "How thoughtful," Olivia said, genuinely impressed. "Most men wouldn't consider such a gesture. What sort of styles does your sister prefer?" As they discussed the merits of different hat designs, Olivia found herself enjoying Isaac's company. He was knowledgeable about quality materials, respectful of her expertise, and possessed a dry wit that had her smiling more than she had in months. After selecting a modestly elegant bonnet with silk ribbons that would withstand the rigors of Colorado weather while still maintaining a touch of Eastern refinement, Isaac lingered at the counter. "I understand there's to be a dance this Saturday," he said, his tone casual but his eyes intent on her face. "Yes, at the schoolhouse. For new books, I believe. Would you consider attending with me, Mrs. Zimmerman?" He smiled at her startled expression. "I'm new in town and could use a guide to the local social customs, and I've found your company most enlightening so far." Olivia hesitated. To arrive at a social function on the arm of the handsome new rancher would set tongues wagging throughout Gunnison. And yet, the prospect was undeniably appealing. "I'd be happy to introduce you to the townsfolk," she said carefully. "Though I should warn you, there are plenty of eligible young ladies in Gunnison who would be more suitable companions." Isaac's expression grew serious. "I've never much cared for what others deem suitable, Mrs. Zimmerman. I prefer to make those judgments for myself." He placed his hat back on his head. "Shall I call for you at 7? Something in his steady gaze challenged her to step beyond the boundaries she'd long accepted. "7 would be fine, Mr. Prescott. Thank you." After he left, Olivia stood motionless behind her counter, questioning her decision. The last time she'd attended a dance with a gentleman had been nearly 3 years ago, and that evening had ended with a humiliating proposal from a widower seeking a mother for his 5 children, not a wife to cherish. The rest of the week passed in a flurry of activity, as Olivia completed several custom orders and prepared her raffle donations for the dance. She found her thoughts repeatedly drifting to Isaac Prescott, wondering what had brought him to Gunnison, and why a man who could clearly afford to settle anywhere would choose their remote mountain town. By Saturday evening, the entire town seemed to be buzzing with anticipation for the dance. Olivia had closed her shop early to prepare, selecting a dress she had made the previous year, but never worn a deep burgundy taffeta with black piping that complemented her auburn hair and fair complexion. She arranged her hair in a simple but elegant chignon, adorned with a small fascinator of her own design featuring a single pheasant feather. Precisely at 7, a knock sounded at her door. She lived in the rooms above her shop, a practical arrangement that saved on rent, but also reinforced her status as a businesswoman rather than a traditional homemaker. Isaac stood on her doorstep, looking handsome in a well-tailored dark suit, his hair neatly combed, and his boots polished to a shine. The smile that spread across his face when he saw her warmed something deep inside Olivia that had been cold for too long. "Mrs. Zimmerman, you are a vision," he said, offering his arm. "Thank you, Mr. Prescott. You're looking quite dapper yourself." She locked her door and accepted his arm, acutely aware of the sturdy strength beneath her fingers. As they walked toward the schoolhouse, the autumn air crisp around them, Olivia felt eyes watching from windows and doorways. By the time they reached the dance, everyone would know she had arrived with the new rancher. "I should warn you," she said quietly, "that by escorting me tonight you may find yourself the subject of considerable gossip." Isaac chuckled. "That's hardly new territory for me. Besides, what's there to gossip about? Two adults enjoying an evening of music and dancing seems straightforward enough. In a larger city, perhaps, but here in Gunnison, every interaction is noted and discussed at length." She glanced at him curiously. "Have you lived in cities, then?" "San Francisco most recently," he confirmed. "Before that, Chicago for a spell, and I was raised in Virginia. The war displaced many of us, as you likely know." "The Civil War?" she asked. "You fought for the Union, yes, though I prefer not to dwell on those days." His expression clouded briefly. "And you? You don't sound like you were born in Colorado." "Philadelphia," she said. "I came west after my parents died. There was nothing left for me there, and I had always yearned for adventure. My father was a hat maker, so I had the skills to establish myself." "Brave," Isaac commented. "Not many women would venture west alone." "Not brave," Olivia corrected. "Necessary, and perhaps a bit foolhardy, but I've never regretted it." They arrived at the schoolhouse, which had been transformed with lanterns, bunting, and flowers. A small band of local musicians was tuning up in one corner, and tables laden with refreshments lined the opposite wall. Almost immediately, Olivia felt the weight of curious stares. Mayor Holbrook approached them first, his wife trailing behind him. "Mr. Prescott, we're delighted you could join us tonight, and Mrs. Zimmerman, how lovely to see you." His eyes darted between them, clearly calculating the implications of their arrival together. "Mayor, Mrs. Holbrook," Isaac greeted them with a firm handshake. "Mrs. Zimmerman has kindly agreed to be my guide to Gunnison society this evening." "How considerate of her," Mrs. Holbrook replied, her gaze lingering disapprovingly on Olivia. "Though I'm sure our younger ladies will be eager to make your acquaintance as well, Mr. Prescott." "I'm sure they're charming," he replied smoothly, "but I find I prefer the company of someone with whom I can have a substantive conversation." The mayor cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Well, enjoy the evening. The dancing will begin shortly." As the Holbrooks moved away, Olivia turned to Isaac with a raised eyebrow. "Substantive conversation," he grinned. "Would you rather I had said I prefer women of experience?" She felt heat rise to her cheeks. "Mr. Prescott, you are deliberately provocative." "Isaac, please." "And yes, occasionally I am." His expression grew more serious, but only when confronted with narrow-mindedness. "You deserve better than to be dismissed based on some arbitrary notion of when a woman should marry." Before she could respond, the band struck up a lively tune, and couples began to form for the first dance. "Shall we?" Isaac extended his hand. Olivia hesitated only briefly before placing her hand in his. "Why not? We might as well give them something worth talking about." As Isaac led her through the steps of the Virginia reel, Olivia became aware of three things. First, that Isaac was an excellent dancer. Second, that the entire room was watching them. And third, that for the first time in years, she didn't care what anyone thought. The joy of moving in harmony with a capable partner, the excitement of his hand at her waist or clasping hers, overwhelmed any concerns about propriety or gossip. When the dance ended, they were both slightly breathless. "You dance wonderfully," Olivia said, genuinely impressed. "As do you," Isaac replied. "Another." They danced 3 more sets before taking a break for refreshments. As Isaac fetched them cups of punch, Olivia found herself cornered by Mrs. Edwards and Mrs. Thornberry, 2 of Gunnison's most notorious gossips. "Well, Olivia," Mrs. Edwards began, "it seems you've caught the attention of our new neighbor, though I'm surprised a man of his standing would be interested in someone established." "Indeed," Mrs. Thornberry added. "Mr. Jenkins told me he's purchased the old Reynolds place outright. A man with those resources could have his pick of brides. My niece Amelia is visiting next month, only 19 and already accomplished on the pianoforte." "How fortunate for Amelia," Olivia replied, maintaining her composure. "I'm sure Mr. Prescott will be pleased to make her acquaintance. He's been most interested in meeting all of Gunnison's residents." "Yes, well," Mrs. Edwards lowered her voice conspiratorially. "A man his age, 45, might dally with an older woman, but when it comes to marriage, they all want someone young enough to bear children. It's only natural." The comment stung more than Olivia wanted to admit. At 32, her chances of motherhood were diminishing, a fact she had made peace with years ago, or thought she had. "Here we are." Isaac's voice broke through her thoughts as he returned with 2 cups. "Ladies, good evening." He nodded politely to Mrs. Edwards and Mrs. Thornberry. "Mr. Prescott," they chorused, suddenly all smiles. "We were just discussing how wonderful it is to have new blood in Gunnison." "It's a fine town," he agreed. "Mrs. Zimmerman has been telling me of its many virtues." He turned to Olivia. "They've opened the doors to cool the room. Would you care for some air?" Grateful for the escape, Olivia nodded. "Excuse us, ladies." Outside, the night had grown cooler, the stars brilliantly clear in the mountain sky. Several couples strolled the schoolyard, keeping a respectable distance from each other. "You seem distressed," Isaac observed as they walked. "Did those women say something to upset you?" Olivia sipped her punch. "Nothing I haven't heard before. They merely reminded me of my place in Gunnison's social hierarchy, the confirmed spinster who should know better than to entertain notions above her station." "And what notions might those be?" "That a man like you might genuinely enjoy my company beyond one evening's diversion." She said it lightly, but couldn't quite keep the edge from her voice. Isaac stopped walking, turning to face her. "Is that what you think this is? A diversion?" In the moonlight, his expression was difficult to read. Olivia chose her words carefully. "I think you're new to town, and I was convenient. I don't blame you for that. It's pleasant to have an escort who doesn't view me as merely a potential housekeeper or mother to his existing children." "You sell yourself short, Olivia." It was the first time he'd used her given name, and it sent an unexpected shiver through her. "I asked you to accompany me tonight because in the brief time we spoke in your shop, I found you intelligent, forthright, and refreshingly genuine. Qualities I value far above youth or conventional beauty, though you possess more than your share of the latter as well." His candor left her momentarily speechless. Before she could formulate a response, the sound of the band starting up again drifted through the open doors. "They're playing a waltz," Isaac said, offering his hand. "One more dance before I return you to your door," they rejoined the dancers, and as Isaac's arm encircled her waist, Olivia allowed herself to be drawn slightly closer than strict propriety dictated. The 3/4 time carried them around the floor, their steps perfectly matched as if they had danced together for years rather than hours. "Tell me about your ranch," Olivia said, conscious of the warmth of his hand at her back. "The double R, what does it stand for?" "Redemption Ranch," he replied, surprising her. At her questioning look, he continued. Every man seeks redemption for something, Olivia. The war left many of us with ghosts that haunt us still. I've spent years chasing success, building fortunes in railroads and mining, but what I truly want now is peace, a place to put down roots. And you believe you'll find that in Gunnison. I believe I've already begun to. His gaze held hers, conveying a message she wasn't quite ready to acknowledge. As the music ended, they stood for a moment longer than necessary, still joined in the dance position, until the tuning of instruments for the next number broke the spell. "May I walk you home?" Isaac asked. Unless you wish to stay longer, the thought of enduring more scrutiny from Gunnison's matrons held no appeal. "I would appreciate the escort, thank you." They said their goodbyes to the mayor and the Ladies' Aid Society representatives, collected Olivia's shawl, and stepped out into the night. The walk back to her shop was leisurely, neither of them seeming eager for the evening to end. "I owe you a debt of gratitude," Isaac said as they approached her door. "This evening was far more enjoyable than I anticipated. Your company made me feel welcome in a town of strangers." "I'm glad," Olivia replied sincerely, "though I suspect you would have charmed them all without my assistance." They reached her doorstep, and Olivia turned to face him, suddenly uncertain of the proper protocol. It had been so long since she'd stood with a man at her door after an evening out. Isaac solved her dilemma by taking her hand and raising it to his lips. "Good night, Olivia Zimmerman. I hope I may call on you again soon." The gentle press of his lips against her knuckles sent a flutter through her chest. "I would like that," she admitted. He waited until she was safely inside before tipping his hat and turning toward the livery where he'd stabled his horse for the evening. Olivia watched his retreating figure from her window, trying to make sense of the emotions swirling within her. Attraction. Certainly Isaac Prescott was undeniably handsome. But there was something more, a recognition perhaps, of a kindred spirit who understood what it meant to forge one's own path regardless of convention. The following weeks brought a significant increase in visitors to Zimmerman's millinery. Women who had previously ordered their hats by mail from Denver suddenly discovered a pressing need for new bonnets, providing them with the perfect excuse to interrogate Olivia about that handsome Mr. Prescott. Olivia maintained her professional demeanor, revealing nothing beyond the fact that Mr. Prescott was a gentleman who had purchased a hat for his sister. Privately, however, she wondered if she would see him again, or if the dance had indeed been a momentary diversion. Her answer came on a brisk Tuesday morning when the bell above her shop door announced a customer. Glancing up from the hat block where she was shaping a new design, Olivia found Isaac standing in her doorway, hat in hand, looking more rugged than he had at the dance. He wore practical ranching clothes, sturdy trousers, a flannel shirt, and a sheepskin coat against the autumn chill. "Mr. Prescott," she greeted him, unsuccessfully fighting a smile. "What brings you to town?" "Supplies," he replied, moving toward her workbench. "And the hope of persuading a certain milliner to join me for dinner this evening. The hotel dining room serves an excellent beefsteak, I'm told." Olivia set down her tools. "That would be quite public." "Does that concern you?" She considered the question honestly. "Not for myself. I've weathered Gunnison's gossip for years, but you're establishing yourself here, building a business. Association with a woman deemed, past her prime, might not serve your interests." Isaac's expression hardened slightly. "I've never much cared for those who judge others by such shallow standards. Besides, if a man can't choose his own dinner companion without scrutiny, what's the point of being the wealthiest rancher in the county?" His tone was light, but his eyes conveyed a deeper message. Olivia laughed despite herself. "When you put it that way, how can I refuse? What time should I be ready?" 6. I have errands to complete, then I'll return." The rest of the day passed in a pleasant haze of anticipation as Olivia tended to customers while mentally reviewing her wardrobe options. She settled on a forest green day dress with subtle gold embroidery at the collar and cuffs festive, without being ostentatious for a dinner in Gunnison's modest hotel. True to his word, Isaac appeared at her door at 6 o'clock, freshly shaven and wearing a clean suit that somehow managed to look natural rather than formal on his broad frame. The hotel dining room was indeed the most elegant establishment in Gunnison, which wasn't saying much by Eastern standards, but represented the frontier town's aspirations toward civilization. White tablecloths, actual wine glasses, and a menu that extended beyond the standard fare of beans and salt pork marked it as the venue for special occasions. Their entrance caused a brief lull in conversation before the buzz resumed, louder than before. Isaac, true to his word, seemed utterly unconcerned by the attention as he seated Olivia and took the chair opposite her. "My sister arrives next week," he said after they had ordered. "I hope you'll meet her. Milliner is something of a bluestocking, studied at Oberlin College and writes for ladies' magazines under a pen name." "How fascinating," Olivia replied, genuinely interested. "I'd be honored to meet her. Does she plan to stay in Gunnison long, indefinitely if she likes it?" "The house is certainly large enough for us both to have our privacy, and she's expressed interest in writing about women's experiences in the West." "She'll find plenty of material here," Olivia said. "The women of Gunnison may not be as educated as your sister, but many have fascinating stories." Mrs. Whittaker at the bakery crossed the plains in a covered wagon as a child, and Widow Chen runs the laundry single-handedly after her husband was killed in a mining accident. "And what of your story?" Isaac asked, his eyes intent on her face. What brought Olivia Zimmerman to Colorado territory alone? Over the excellent beefsteak and roasted potatoes, Olivia found herself sharing more of her history than she had with anyone in Gunnison. She told Isaac about growing up in her father's hat shop, learning the trade from childhood, and how the influenza epidemic of 1873 had claimed both her parents within a week of each other. "I stayed in Philadelphia for 2 more years," she explained, "working for another milliner. But the memories were too painful, and I had no other family. When I read an advertisement seeking women of good character to settle in the Western Territories, it seemed like an opportunity for a fresh start." "Was it what you expected?" she smiled wryly. "Hardly. The advertisement neglected to mention the primitive conditions, the harsh winters, or the ratio of men to women that made one feel like a prize heifer at auction. But I adapted, and I built something of my own, which has given me more satisfaction than a hasty marriage ever could have." "You never considered returning east?" "Once or twice during particularly brutal winters," she admitted. "But Gunnison is home now despite its flaws." Isaac nodded understanding. "And the townspeople, have they always been so concerned with your marital status?" Olivia sighed. "Not always. The first few years, I was poor Miss Zimmerman, brave but clearly out of her depth. Then, as my business flourished, I became ambitious Miss Zimmerman, admirable but slightly unnatural. By the time I turned 30, I had graduated to confirmed spinster Zimmerman, an object of pity but useful for community projects and minding children during social events." She smiled to soften the bitterness of her words. "And you mentioned railroads and mining. How does a Virginia gentleman become a Colorado rancher?" Isaac's expression grew distant. "The war changed everything for my family. Our land was confiscated. My father died at Antietam, and my mother relocated to her sister's home in Illinois. I headed west as soon as I mustered out, working my way from cowhand to foreman to investor. I've been fortunate in business, but I've never found a place that felt like home until now. And what makes Gunnison feel like home? She asked the question lightly, but her heart quickened as she awaited his answer. The mountains, he said, gesturing toward the window where the silhouettes of the San Juans were visible against the darkening sky. The clean air, the sense of possibility. His eyes returned to hers. And perhaps the company. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken possibilities. "Tell me about your ranch," Olivia said, breaking the tension. "Is it truly as large as people say?" Isaac accepted the change of subject gracefully, describing the 5,000-acre property with its natural meadows, pine forests, and the clear creek that ran through it. He spoke of his plans for raising cattle suited to the high country, of the improvements he was making to the main house, and of his hope to establish an operation that would endure for generations. "You speak as though you're building a legacy," Olivia observed as they finished their coffee. "Do you have family who will inherit it someday?" "Not yet," Isaac replied simply. "But I'm only 42. I haven't given up hope of a family of my own." The statement hung in the air between them, neither a declaration nor a proposal but an acknowledgement of shared understanding. At 42 and 32, they were both at ages where society had begun to write them off as unmarriageable, yet young enough that dreams of family remained possible. By the time Isaac escorted her back to her shop, Olivia felt herself teetering on the edge of something both thrilling and terrifying. It had been years since she had allowed herself to imagine a future that included a partner, children, a life beyond her millinery shop. "Thank you for a lovely evening," she said as they reached her door. "The pleasure was mine," Isaac replied. "May I call on you again? I'd like that." This time, when he took her hand, he drew her slightly closer, his eyes questioning. When she didn't pull away, he leaned down and brushed his lips against hers, a kiss so gentle it might have been a whisper, yet it sent warmth spreading through her entire body. "Good night, Olivia," he murmured, releasing her hand. "Good night, Isaac," she replied, her voice steadier than she expected given the hammering of her heart. The arrival of Isaac Prescott the following week caused nearly as much stir in Gunnison as her brother had. Tall, slender, and possessed of the same direct gaze as Isaac, Isaac cut an impressive figure in her fashionable traveling outfit as she descended from the stagecoach. Olivia, who had been invited to dine at the ranch that weekend to meet Isaac, found herself unexpectedly nervous about making a good impression. She selected one of her finest creations as a welcoming gift, a practical yet elegant riding hat that would serve Isaac well in her new environment. The Redemption Ranch was even more impressive than Isaac had described. The main house, built of local stone and timber, sprawled comfortably against the backdrop of pine-covered hills. Large windows captured the spectacular mountain views, and a wide veranda wrapped around three sides, promising pleasant outdoor living during the warmer months. Isaac greeted her at the door himself, his face lighting with a smile that made Olivia's heart skip. "You came," he said, as if he'd harbored doubts. "I promised I would," she replied, returning his smile, "though I confess the ride was longer than I expected." "Next time I'll send the carriage," he said, taking her wrap and the hat box she carried. "Isaac is in the parlor. She's eager to meet you." Isaac Prescott rose as they entered, extending her hand with a warm smile. "Mrs. Zimmerman, what a pleasure. Isaac has spoken of little else since I arrived." "Has he indeed?" Olivia glanced at Isaac, who had the grace to look slightly abashed. "I hope he hasn't built me up too grandly. I'm merely a small-town milliner." "Nonsense," Isaac declared. Any woman who establishes her own business in the wilderness and thrives for 7 years, is remarkable by any standard. Besides, Isaac tells me you create the finest hats west of Denver. Speaking of which, Isaac said, presenting the hat box to his sister, Olivia has brought you a welcome gift. Aliner's delight at the riding hat was genuine and effusive. It's perfect. How did you know I've been lamenting the loss of my favorite riding hat? It blew off during the stage coach journey and was trampled before anyone could retrieve it. A lucky guess, Olivia said, pleased by the reception. I thought it might be useful for exploring your new home. The dinner that followed was one of the most enjoyable evenings Olivia had spent in years. Aliner was well-read and articulate, with progressive views on women's rights and education that aligned closely with Olivia's own. Isaac was a thoughtful host, ensuring both women were comfortable while contributing his own insights to the conversation. You'll stay the night, of course, Aliner said as they finished dessert. It's far too dark for you to return to town now. Olivia hesitated. I hadn't planned, I insist, Isaac interjected. The guest room is prepared. I took the liberty of anticipating the invitation might be extended. The thought of staying under Isaac's roof, even with the propriety ensured by Aliner's presence, gave Olivia pause. Not because she feared for her reputation at 32, she had earned the right to make her own decisions, but because it represented another step towards something she had convinced herself she would never have. Thank you, she said finally. That's very kind. Later, as Aliner showed her to the guest room, a charming chamber with a 4-poster bed and windows that would frame the mountains at sunrise, the older woman paused at the door. I should tell you, Aliner said quietly, that I haven't seen my brother this content in years. Whatever is growing between you brings out his best qualities. Olivia felt a flush rise to her cheeks. We're only friends. Aliner's knowing smile suggested she wasn't convinced. Of course, just friends who look at each other as if no one else exists when you think the other isn't watching. Before Olivia could formulate a response, Aliner bid her good night, leaving her alone with thoughts that kept her awake far into the night. The weeks that followed fell into a pleasant pattern. Isaac would come to town twice a week on ranch business, always making time to visit Olivia's shop. Sometimes they shared a meal at the hotel. Other times, they simply walked along the river that skirted the edge of town, talking of books they had read, places they had seen, and increasingly, dreams they harbored for the future. Aliner, too, became a regular visitor to Zimmerman's millinery, often bringing a picnic lunch to share while she interviewed Olivia for an article on women entrepreneurs in the West. Through these conversations, a genuine friendship developed between the women, independent of Aliner's relationship with Isaac. As November deepened toward winter, the first heavy snows blanketed Gunnison, transforming the rugged landscape into a pristine wonderland. Travel became more difficult, but Isaac still appeared at Olivia's door, his horse leaving deep tracks in the fresh powder. You shouldn't have risked the journey, Olivia scolded as she ushered him in from the cold. The pass can be treacherous after a snowfall. I promised to bring you these, he replied, producing a package of books Aliner had ordered from Denver for her. Besides, I wanted to ensure you were well prepared for winter. Your chimney is drawing properly. You have sufficient coal and firewood. His concern touched her. Yes to all of the above. I've weathered 7 Colorado winters, Isaac. Nevertheless, he persisted, the ranch house is better insulated with ample provisions. If the weather turns severe, I want you to consider staying with us. Aliner would welcome the company, and there's no sense in you struggling alone through a blizzard when there's plenty of room at Redemption. The invitation was practical, neighborly even, but Olivia sensed deeper currents beneath it. In the months since Isaac had arrived in Gunnison, their relationship had evolved from acquaintances to friends to something not yet defined but increasingly precious to them both. "I'll keep that in mind," she promised. "Now, would you like some coffee to warm you before you head back?" Over steaming cups in her small sitting room above the shop, Isaac seemed unusually pensive. "I've been thinking," he said finally, "about Christmas. Eleanor wants to host a proper celebration at the ranch dinner, a tree, perhaps even some music if we can convince Judge Williams to bring his fiddle." "Would you join us?" "I'd be delighted," Olivia replied, "though I usually attend the town gathering at the church as well. Of course, we could all attend together, then return to the ranch afterward." He set down his cup, his expression turning serious. "Olivia, there's something else I've been meaning to discuss with you." The change in his tone sent a flutter of anxiety through her. "Yes, I've noticed that business has been slower for you since the snow began," she sighed. "It's the same every winter. People venture out less, and fewer travelers pass through. I manage by planning ahead, saving during the busier months." "I admire your resourcefulness," Isaac said, "but I wonder if you've ever considered expanding your business beyond Gunnison. Your designs are exceptional. With the right connections, they could be sold in Denver, even San Francisco or Chicago." Olivia stared at him in surprise. "I've dreamed of it, certainly. But the logistics, I have contacts," he continued eagerly. "Merchants who would be interested in quality millinery with Western authenticity but Eastern sophistication. Your work embodies both." "You've thought about this," she said, touched by his interest in her business. "I have." He reached across the small table to take her hand. "I believe in what you've built, Olivia. And I believe it could grow into something even more remarkable with the right support." The warmth of his hand around hers, the sincerity in his eyes, and the respect implicit in his proposal all combined to create a swell of emotion that threatened to overwhelm her. "Thank you," she managed. "I'll consider it seriously. That's all I ask." He squeezed her hand gently before releasing it. "Now I should start back before the light fades. The snow makes the trail deceptive after dark." At the door he paused, studying her face as if committing it to memory. "Christmas, then. You'll come?" "I'll come," she promised. His smile warmed her more effectively than the fire crackling in her small stove. "Until then." After he left, Olivia stood at her window watching his figure grow smaller as he rode toward the mountains, her thoughts a tumultuous mixture of hope and fear. Hope that what was developing between them might lead to lasting happiness. Fear that she was setting herself up for heartbreak by allowing herself to dream after so many years of pragmatic independence. The Christmas season brought a flurry of activity to Gunnison as the town prepared for its annual celebration. Olivia found herself busier than expected with last-minute orders for holiday bonnets and gift hats, leaving her little time to dwell on her complicated feelings for Isaac Prescott. Eleanor visited frequently, ostensibly to help with preparations, but mainly, Olivia suspected, to provide companionship during the season that could be particularly lonely for those without family. "Isaac is like a child about Christmas," Eleanor confided as they wrapped packages one evening. "He's had the ranch hands dragging in the largest pine tree I've ever seen for the Great Hall, and he's ordered decorations from Denver that would befit a mansion in New York. He strikes me as a man who does nothing by half measures," Olivia observed, smiling at the image of Isaac directing the placement of a massive Christmas tree. "Only when he cares deeply about something," Eleanor replied, giving Olivia a meaningful look. "Or someone." Before Olivia could respond to this unsubtle hint, Eleanor changed the subject. "Have you decided what to wear for Christmas dinner? I was thinking of my burgundy silk, but perhaps that's too formal for Gunnison." Not at all, Olivia assured her. Christmas is the one occasion when everyone dresses in their finest. I've been working on a new dress myself, midnight blue velvet with silver trim. It sounds lovely, Eleanor said. Isaac's favorite color is blue, you know. Olivia felt her cheeks warm at the implication. Is it indeed? Eleanor nodded, her expression innocent but her eyes twinkling. He'll be quite captivated, I imagine. Christmas Eve dawned clear and cold, the temperature well below freezing but the sky a brilliant Colorado blue that promised perfect weather for the community celebration. Olivia spent the morning finishing last-minute details on her new dress, then closed the shop early to prepare for the evening. As promised, Isaac arrived with the ranch's sleigh at 4 o'clock to transport her to the church service. Eleanor sat bundled in furs, waving cheerfully as Isaac helped Olivia into the sleigh, tucking warm blankets around her against the biting cold. "You look beautiful," he murmured, his breath forming a cloud in the frigid air. "Thank you," she replied, suddenly shy under his admiring gaze. "So does the sleigh. I didn't realize you had one." "A recent acquisition," he admitted as he took the reins. "I thought it might make winter travel more pleasant for Eleanor and for guests." The town church was already filling with Gunnison's residents when they arrived. Their entrance together caused the expected stir, but Olivia found she cared less about the whispers and stares than she once had. The service was simple but moving carols sung by lantern light, readings from the Gospel of Luke, and the minister's message of hope and new beginnings. Afterward, the congregation moved to the schoolhouse for the community feast and gift exchange. Long tables groaned under the weight of everyone's contributions, roasted turkeys and hams, pies of every description, cakes, cookies, and punch for the children. Olivia noticed that Isaac and Eleanor were welcomed warmly, their generous donations to the school fund and church roof repair having earned them goodwill despite their newcomer status. Even Mrs. Thornberry seemed to have moderated her disapproval of Olivia's friendship with the Prescotts, going so far as to compliment her dress. "It's remarkable what money can do for one's social standing," Olivia whispered to Isaac as they found seats at one of the tables. He chuckled. "Money opens doors, but it doesn't guarantee acceptance. I think they've realized we genuinely care about Gunnison's future." He glanced around the festive room. "This is what community should be, people coming together to share what they have, regardless of background or circumstances." His words resonated with Olivia, reminding her of what she had first loved about Gunnison. Despite its flaws and occasional narrow-mindedness, the town had a heart that revealed itself in moments like these when neighbors supported each other through harsh winters, celebrated together in times of plenty, and grieved together in times of loss. As the evening progressed, Olivia found herself caught up in the genuine warmth of the celebration. She sang carols with the schoolchildren, exchanged small gifts with friends, and even danced a Virginia reel with the blacksmith's teenage son who had been too shy to ask any of the girls his own age. Through it all, she was aware of Isaac's presence, his rich laughter joining the general merriment, his generosity as he distributed candies to the children, and most of all, his gaze repeatedly finding hers across the room, a silent communication that made her heart race every time. By the time they departed for Redemption Ranch, the moon had risen high, casting silver light across the snow-covered landscape. The sleigh bells jingled merrily as the horses trotted along the packed trail, and Eleanor, nestled between Isaac and Olivia, regaled them with stories of Christmases from her childhood in Virginia. Redemption Ranch was transformed when they arrived. Lanterns illuminated the path to the house, and through the windows, Olivia could see the glow of a massive fire in the great hall's stone fireplace. Inside, the promised Christmas tree dominated one end of the room, decorated with glass ornaments, strings of cranberries and popcorn, and small candles that cast a magical light. "It's magnificent," Olivia breathed, turning slowly to take in the full effect. "Like something from a storybook." Isaac's expression was one of deep satisfaction as he watched her reaction. "I wanted it to be special. It's our first Christmas at Redemption." "You've succeeded admirably, brother," Eleanor declared, removing her cloak and gloves. "Now, I believe a toast is in order before dinner. The cook has everything prepared. We need only ring when we're ready." She busied herself at the sideboard, pouring 3 glasses of amber liquid that Olivia recognized as fine brandy, a luxury rarely seen in Gunnison. "To new beginnings," Eleanor proposed, raising her glass. "And to finding home in unexpected places." "To home," Isaac echoed, his eyes meeting Olivia's over the rim of his glass. The dinner that followed was intimate and perfect roast goose with all the trimmings, served in the ranch's elegant dining room where a smaller tree adorned with silver ornaments graced one corner. The conversation flowed as easily as the wine, spanning topics from literature to politics to plans for the ranch in the coming year. "I've commissioned plans for a conservatory," Isaac mentioned as they lingered over dessert, a rich plum pudding Eleanor had prepared according to their mother's recipe. "Attached to the east wing, with glass on 3 sides to capture the morning light." Eleanor claims she can't live without growing things, even in winter. "It sounds wonderful," Olivia said, imagining how beautiful it would be to see the snow-covered mountains through walls of glass while surrounded by greenery. "You must help me plan what to grow," Eleanor told her. "I'm thinking beyond the usual ferns and palms, perhaps some flowering shrubs that would remind us of spring during the long winter months." The easy way Eleanor included her in future plans touched Olivia deeply. The Prescotts had become important to her in ways she hadn't anticipated when Isaac first walked into her shop 4 months earlier. After dinner, they returned to the great hall where Isaac built up the fire while Eleanor arranged their gifts beneath the tree. "It's tradition in our family to open presents on Christmas Eve," she explained. "Then Christmas Day is for leisure and reflection." The gifts they exchanged were thoughtful rather than extravagant. Olivia had created a new hat for Eleanor more sophisticated than the riding hat, suitable for church or social calls in Denver. For Isaac, she had fashioned a leather-bound journal with the Redemption Ranch brand embossed on the cover. "For your plans and dreams," she explained as he ran his fingers over the tooled leather. "Every great endeavor should be documented." "It's perfect," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "Thank you." Eleanor's gift to Olivia was a beautiful cashmere shawl in shades of blue and green that complemented her coloring perfectly. "From my travels in India," she explained. "I thought of you as soon as I saw it." Isaac seemed nervous as he presented his gift, a small box wrapped in silver paper. "It's not extravagant," he cautioned as Olivia carefully untied the ribbon. "But when I saw it, I thought of you." Inside, nestled on a bed of velvet, lay a brooch in the shape of a bird in flight. Crafted of silver with tiny seed pearls for eyes, it captured the essence of freedom and grace. "Isaac, it's beautiful," she whispered, lifting it from the box. "I've never owned anything so lovely." "You reminded me of that bird the first day we met," he said quietly. "Proud and independent, determined to soar on your own terms regardless of what others thought you should be." The depth of understanding in his words brought tears to her eyes. "Thank you. I'll treasure it always." Eleanor, observing the moment with satisfaction, stifled a yawn. "If you'll both excuse me, I find I'm quite exhausted. All the excitement, I suppose." She rose, kissing her brother's cheek and squeezing Olivia's hand. Don't stay up too late, you two. Merry Christmas." After she left, a companionable silence fell between Olivia and Isaac as they sat before the fire, the only light coming from the flames and the small candles on the Christmas tree. "Are you happy here?" Isaac asked suddenly. "In Gunnison, I mean." Olivia considered the question seriously. "I've made a life here. It's not always been easy, but it's mine. So yes, I suppose I am happy, content at least." She turned to look at him. "Are you happy with your decision to settle here?" "Increasingly so," he replied, his gaze holding hers. "Though my happiness has less to do with geography than I expected." Her heart quickened at the implication. "Oh." Isaac set aside his brandy glass and shifted to face her more directly. "Olivia, I didn't come to Gunnison by accident. I'd heard about the town, its potential, the beauty of the valley, but I could have chosen a dozen other places to establish a ranch." "What made you choose here?" she asked softly. "A newspaper article," he said, surprising her. "In the Denver Post, about a milliner in Gunnison who had designed hats for the governor's wife. It mentioned that Miss Zimmerman had established her business as a young woman alone on the frontier and built it into a respected enterprise." Olivia remembered the article, a small piece that had resulted in several orders from Denver's elite. "You came to Gunnison because of a newspaper article about me." "I came to Gunnison because I was intrigued by a woman who forged her own path in a world that rarely allows women such freedom," he clarified. "When I arrived and met you, I discovered the reality far exceeded the article's description." He took her hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "I've known many women, Olivia. Beautiful women, wealthy women, women with impeccable social connections. None have affected me the way you do. Your intelligence, your courage, your quiet dignity in the face of small-town prejudices, they humble and inspire me." Olivia found herself speechless in the face of his declaration. For so long, she had armored herself against hope, convinced that the life she had built alone was all she would ever have. Now, confronted with the possibility of more, she felt both exhilarated and terrified. "I don't know what to say," she admitted finally. "You don't need to say anything yet," Isaac assured her. "I only wanted you to know that when I look at you, I don't see a woman who is too old for anything. I see a woman perfectly aged, like the finest wine complex, mature, and infinitely more interesting than the untested vintage society seems to prefer." The compliment warmed her more deeply than the fire before them. "You have a gift with words, Mr. Prescott." "Only when inspired," he replied with a smile. "And you, Mrs. Zimmerman, are extremely inspiring." Later, as the fire burned low and the candles on the tree had been extinguished for safety, Isaac walked Olivia to her guest room. At her door he paused, his expression suddenly serious again. "I have one more Christmas wish," he said softly. "What might that be?" she asked, already anticipating his answer. "This," he murmured and leaned down to capture her lips with his. Unlike their first brief kiss, this was a thorough exploration, tender yet passionate, a declaration of intent rather than a tentative question. Olivia responded in kind, her arms sliding around his neck as she yielded to the feelings she had kept carefully contained for weeks. When they finally parted, both slightly breathless, Isaac rested his forehead against hers. "Merry Christmas, Olivia." "Merry Christmas, Isaac," she whispered back. As she closed her door, Olivia pressed her fingers to her lips, still warm from his kiss. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a future filled with possibilities she had long since abandoned. Christmas Day at Redemption Ranch passed in a haze of happiness for Olivia. They breakfasted late, enjoying fresh bread and preserves by the fire in the great hall. Isaac read aloud from Dickens while Alina worked on a piece of needlepoint, and Olivia simply absorbed the peaceful domestic scene, storing it in her memory. In the afternoon, despite the cold, Isaac insisted on showing Olivia the full extent of the ranch, the stables with their fine horses, the bunkhouse where the ranch hands were enjoying their own Christmas celebration, and finally, the site where the conservatory would be built come spring. "I can see it already," he said, his arm around her shoulders as they stood looking at the marked-off area. Glass walls rising to a domed ceiling, filled with ferns and flowering plants, perhaps even a small fountain in the center. "It will be beautiful," Olivia agreed, leaning into his warmth. "Beautiful and practical," he added. "A place of warmth and growth during the coldest months, a reminder that winter always yields to spring eventually." She glanced up at him, sensing a metaphor in his words. "Is that what I am to you, a reminder of spring?" His expression softened as he looked down at her. "You are the spring itself, Olivia, unexpected, vibrant, and utterly necessary for my happiness." The days between Christmas and New Year passed in a similar pattern of contentment. Olivia returned to town briefly to tend to her shop, but spent most of her time at the ranch, drawn by the warmth of the Prescott's company and the growing certainty that what she felt for Isaac was deeper and more profound than anything she had experienced before. On New Year's Eve, the Prescotts hosted a small gathering for their closest neighbors, the Hendersons from the adjacent ranch, Judge Williams and his wife, and Dr. and Mrs. Carter from town. Olivia found herself treated as co-hostess rather than guest, a role that felt surprisingly natural as she helped Eleanor arrange refreshments and ensure everyone's comfort. As midnight approached, Isaac called for attention, raising his glass in a toast. "To the year behind us, with its challenges and triumphs, and to the year ahead, which I believe promises even greater happiness." His eyes found Olivia's across the room, and in that moment, she knew with absolute certainty that her life was about to change irrevocably. After the guests had departed and Eleanor had retired, claiming fatigue, Isaac led Olivia onto the veranda. Despite the cold, the sky was clear, stars scattered like diamonds across the velvet darkness. "My father once told me," Isaac said as they gazed upward, "that the decisions we make on the first day of the year set the pattern for all that follows." "Wise advice," Olivia replied. "What decisions are you contemplating for tomorrow?" He turned to face her, taking both her hands in his. "Only one that matters, whether you will consider becoming my wife." Though she had half expected the question, hearing it spoken aloud still sent a shock through her. "Isaac, before you answer," he continued earnestly, "I want you to understand what I'm offering. Not just my name or my protection or my wealth, though all of those are yours if you want them. I'm offering partnership, Olivia. I admire the life you've built for yourself, the independence you've fought for. I would never ask you to surrender that." "What are you asking then?" she whispered. "For the privilege of standing beside you as you continue to build that life. For your wisdom in helping me build mine. For the chance to face whatever comes good or ill together rather than alone." His voice deepened with emotion. "I love you, Olivia Zimmerman. Not despite your age or experience, but because of them. You are exactly the woman I have been searching for all my life, though I didn't know it until I found you." Tears filled Olivia's eyes, not of sadness but of overwhelming joy. For so long she had accepted the town's verdict that she was past the age for love, for marriage, for beginning anew. Now, confronted with the depth of Isaac's feelings and the sincerity of his proposal, she recognized the lie for what it was. "Yes," she said simply. "Yes, I will marry you, Isaac Prescott." His smile was like the sunrise breaking over the mountains, radiant with promise and possibilities. Drawing her into his arms, he kissed her with a tenderness that spoke volumes about the care he would always take with her heart. "When?" he asked when they finally drew apart. "Spring. Summer." Olivia laughed at his eagerness. "Don't you think we should allow some time for the town to adjust to the idea, and for proper preparations?" "I've waited 42 years to find you," he reminded her. "My patience is not inexhaustible." "Then let's say Valentine's Day," she suggested. "February 14th. That gives us 6 weeks, which is respectable without being overly cautious." "Valentine's Day," he agreed, sealing the decision with another kiss. "A fitting date to begin our life together." The announcement of their engagement caused exactly the stir in Gunnison that Olivia had anticipated. Reactions ranged from genuine delight, particularly from those who had come to know and respect the Prescotts, to barely concealed disapproval from those who still believed a woman of 32 had no business entertaining romantic notions. Mrs. Thornberry was among the first to visit Zimmerman's millinery after the news spread, her curiosity barely disguised as congratulations. "Well, my dear, you have certainly surprised us all. Mr. Prescott could have had his pick of any young woman in the county. You must be very persuasive." Olivia, secure in Isaac's love and increasingly indifferent to small-town gossip, merely smiled. "Mr. Prescott is a man who knows his own mind, Mrs. Thornberry. We are well suited in temperament, interests, and goals for the future." "Yes, well," the older woman sniffed. "I suppose at your ages, one can't be too particular, though I wonder about children. Surely he must want heirs for that magnificent ranch." "If we are blessed with children, we will welcome them joyfully," Olivia replied, her tone making it clear the subject was closed for discussion. "Now, was there a particular hat style you were interested in today?" Milliner proved to be an enthusiastic ally in wedding preparations, taking charge of transforming the ranch house for the celebration and corresponding with friends in Denver and San Francisco to secure items not available in Gunnison. "We'll be married in the town church," Olivia told her as they reviewed plans one snowy afternoon in late January. "It's important to me that the ceremony be accessible to everyone in Gunnison, even those who might disapprove. This is my home, after all." "And the reception at the ranch afterward," Milliner confirmed. "Isaac has ordered champagne from Denver, and the cook is beside herself with plans for the wedding feast." "It seems extravagant for such a small town," Olivia worried. "I don't want people to think I'm putting on airs now that I'm marrying into wealth." Milliner waved away her concern. "Nonsense. A wedding should be celebrated properly. Besides, Isaac has waited his entire life to find the right woman. Let him indulge a little in marking the occasion." As the wedding date approached, Olivia found herself increasingly busy dividing her time between her shop and preparations for her new life. Isaac had insisted she maintain ownership of her business, even offering to build her a studio at the ranch where she could continue creating her designs, while hiring an assistant to manage the shop in town. "Your independence and skill are part of what I love about you," he told her when she expressed surprise at his support. "I would never ask you to abandon something that brings you such satisfaction." The night before the wedding, as Olivia packed the last of her personal belongings from the rooms above her shop, she felt a momentary pang at leaving the space that had been her home for so many years. Simple though it was, this place had sheltered her through good times and bad, serving as both haven and workshop as she built her life in Gunnison. A knock at her door interrupted her reflections. Milliner stood on the threshold, wrapped in a heavy cloak against the February cold. "I thought you might need company tonight," she said, holding up a basket. "I've brought tea and some of Mrs. Henderson's shortbread." Grateful for the distraction from her melancholy thoughts, Olivia welcomed her soon-to-be sister-in-law inside. They settled before the small stove, sipping tea as the wind whistled around the eaves. "Are you nervous?" Eleanor asked gently. "Not about marrying Isaac," Olivia replied honestly, "but about all that comes with it, being mistress of Redemption Ranch, becoming part of a family again after so many years alone. It's a significant change." "You won't be alone," Eleanor assured her. "I'll help in any way I can. And Isaac, well, I've never seen my brother so determined to make someone happy." Olivia smiled at that. "He does tend to approach everything with remarkable focus. Only the things that truly matter to him," Eleanor corrected. "And you, Olivia Zimmerman, matter to him more than anything in this world." Valentine's Day dawned clear and cold, the sun transforming the snow-covered landscape into a glittering wonderland that seemed designed especially for the occasion. Olivia dressed carefully in the wedding gown. She and Eleanor had created together a confection of ivory silk, with delicate lace overlays that managed to be both elegant and practical for a frontier wedding. Instead of a traditional veil, she wore a small hat of her own design, adorned with silk flowers and a modest net that partially obscured her features without hiding them completely. At her throat gleamed the silver bird brooch Isaac had given her for Christmas, a symbol of the freedom they would build together, rather than surrender to each other. The church was filled to capacity when she arrived on the arm of Judge Williams, who had offered to give her away in the absence of any family. Every resident of Gunnison, it seemed, had turned out to witness the union of the town's spinster milliner and the wealthy rancher, some out of genuine goodwill, others from pure curiosity. Olivia barely noticed them, her attention fixed solely on Isaac, standing tall and handsome at the altar, his face illuminated with joy as he watched her approach. In that moment, every whisper that she was too old for such happiness faded into insignificance against the reality of the man waiting to make her his wife. The ceremony was brief but meaningful, their voices clear and steady as they exchanged the vows that would bind them together for life. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Isaac's kiss was tender yet possessive, a promise of the passion they would share in private. The reception at Redemption Ranch exceeded even Eleanor's meticulous planning. The great hall had been transformed with garlands of evergreens and early spring flowers brought by train from Denver. Tables laden with food and drink accommodated guests who had traveled from as far as San Francisco to celebrate with them, while a small orchestra played waltzes and reels for those inclined to dance. Through it all, Isaac remained at Olivia's side, his pride in his new wife evident in every glance, every touch, every introduction to friends from his past. "Mrs. Prescott," he murmured during a rare moment alone as they stood near the massive fireplace, "how do you find married life thus far?" Olivia pretended to consider the question seriously. "It's been nearly 6 hours now. I believe I'm adapting well, though the sample size is perhaps too small for definitive conclusions." His laugh drew attention from nearby guests, always practical. "It's one of the many qualities I adore about you." "And what else do you adore, Mr. Prescott?" she teased, feeling uncharacteristically bold in her happiness. His gaze softened as it traveled over her face. "Your courage, your intelligence. The way your eyes change color with your mood, green when you're amused, blue when you're pensive. The strength in your hands from years of honest work. The compassion you show to those who don't always deserve it." Each word was a caress, wrapping around her heart and binding it more securely to his. "I love you," she whispered, saying the words she had held back until now, wanting them to be perfect when finally spoken. "And I love you," he replied, bending to brush his lips against hers, heedless of the watching crowd. "More than I ever thought possible." As the celebration continued around them, Olivia looked out over the assembled guests, the townspeople who had labeled her a spinster now raising glasses to her happiness. The ranch hands who had welcomed her as their boss's bride. Eleanor, beaming with satisfaction at the match she had encouraged from the start. And beside her, Isaac, the man who had seen beyond society's arbitrary deadlines to the woman she truly was. "Too old for marriage," they said, she murmured, more to herself than to Isaac. He heard her nonetheless, his arm tightening around her waist. "Perfectly aged," he corrected, raising his glass in a private toast. "Like the finest wine." Epilogue: Spring came early to Gunnison in 1884, the snow retreating from the valley by mid-March to reveal tender green shoots pushing through the soil. At Redemption Ranch, the construction of the conservatory proceeded rapidly, its glass walls rising to capture the strengthening sunlight. Olivia divided her time between her shop in town, which now employed 2 assistants to handle the increased demand generated by her marriage to one of the territory's wealthiest men, and her duties as mistress of the ranch. To her surprise, she found the transition easier than anticipated, thanks largely to Isaac's unwavering support and Eleanor's practical guidance. Their first dinner party as a married couple, held in April to celebrate the completion of the conservatory, was deemed a resounding success by all who attended. Even Mrs. Thornberry was forced to admit that Olivia had adapted admirably to her new position in society. "Though I still maintain it was most irregular," she confided to Mrs. Edwards, as they admired the exotic plants Eleanor had installed in the glass-walled extension. "A woman of her age, marrying so advantageously, one would almost suspect. I would be cautious about completing that thought, Mrs. Thornberry," came Isaac's voice from behind them, his tone pleasant but with an unmistakable edge of steel. "My wife's character is beyond reproach, as is the depth of my affection for her. We are fortunate to have found each other, regardless of when in life that discovery occurred." His defense, delivered without anger but with absolute conviction, effectively silenced any further speculation about the nature of their union. From that day forward, even the most inveterate gossips in Gunnison accepted that the marriage of Isaac and Olivia Prescott was based on genuine love, rather than convenience or calculation. In June, as wildflowers carpeted the meadows surrounding the ranch house, Olivia made a discovery that filled her with equal parts terror and exhilaration, confirming her suspicions with Dr. Carter in town. She returned to Redemption Ranch to find Isaac in the newly completed conservatory, discussing the installation of a small fountain with the stonemason. "Could we have a moment alone?" she asked, her voice betraying her nervousness despite her best efforts. Isaac immediately dismissed the workman, his expression shifting to concern as he took in her pale face. "What is it? Are you unwell?" "Not unwell exactly," she began, then found herself unable to continue. "Olivia, you're frightening me," Isaac said, taking her hands in his. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together. Just tell me." Drawing a deep breath, she met his gaze directly. "I'm with child. Dr. Carter estimates the baby will arrive in January." For a moment, Isaac stood perfectly still, his face a study in shock. Then, with a whoop of pure joy, he lifted her off her feet, spinning her in a circle before setting her gently back down. "A baby," he breathed, his eyes wide with wonder. "Our baby. Oh, Olivia." His unrestrained delight erased her lingering fears about being an older mother. "You're happy, then?" "Happy doesn't begin to describe it," he assured her, pulling her into a tender embrace. "Though perhaps a bit concerned about spinning you just now. Is that safe?" Should you be resting? What did the doctor say? She laughed at his sudden transformation into a protective father-to-be. He said I'm perfectly healthy and should continue my normal activities as long as they don't exhaust me. And yes, moderate spinning appears to be acceptable. The news of Olivia's pregnancy spread quickly through Gunnison, generating a fresh wave of gossip that she now found more amusing than hurtful. She was secure in her husband's love, supported by her sister-in-law's friendship, and increasingly confident in her ability to navigate any challenge, including motherhood at 33. Throughout the summer and fall, as her body changed to accommodate the growing child, Olivia continued to work on her millinery designs, though she gradually reduced her hours in the shop as fatigue became a more frequent companion. Isaac insisted on having a comfortable debte installed in her ranch studio where she could rest between bursts of creativity. "You're not to exhaust yourself," he told her firmly. "The business can wait. Your health and our child's well-being cannot." His concern was touching, if occasionally stifling. Olivia learned to accept his protective instincts while gently reminding him that pregnancy was not an illness, merely a different state of being. Milliner proved to be an invaluable ally during this time, sharing books on childbirth and infant care while helping to prepare the nursery adjacent to the master bedroom. She also took on more responsibility for managing the household, ensuring Olivia had time to rest without feeling she was neglecting her duties as mistress of Redemption Ranch. "I never imagined I would be an aunt," Milliner confessed as they sorted through tiny garments sent by Isaac's friends from around the country. "After the war, when Isaac seemed determined to remain a bachelor forever, I resigned myself to a life without children nearby. And now?" Olivia asked, folding a delicately embroidered gown. Milliner's smile was radiant. "Now I plan to be the most devoted aunt any child has ever known. Spoiling this baby will be my new vocation." As Christmas approached and Olivia's time drew near, Isaac insisted on hiring a nurse from Denver to stay at the ranch until after the birth. Mrs. Hansen, a sturdy Norwegian widow with 30 years' experience delivering babies, arrived in mid-December, her practical manner and quiet competence immediately setting Olivia at ease. "First babies often come late," she assured the anxious parents-to-be. "But we'll be ready whenever this little one decides to make an appearance." On New Year's Eve, exactly 1 year after Isaac had proposed, Olivia felt the first twinges of what she suspected might be labor pains. By midnight, as revelers in town celebrated the arrival of 1885, she was deep in the serious work of bringing their child into the world. Isaac refused to be banished to the traditional male waiting space, instead remaining by her side throughout the long hours, supporting her through each contraction, wiping her brow, and murmuring encouragement when her strength flagged. "You are the strongest person I know," he told her as dawn approached and the labor intensified. "You can do this, Olivia, just a little longer." At precisely 8:17 on the morning of January 1, 1885, Thomas Henry Prescott announced his arrival with a robust cry that echoed through the master bedroom of Redemption Ranch. Weighing a healthy 8 pounds, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that already showed hints of his father's hazel, he was declared perfect by Mrs. Hansen as she placed him in Olivia's trembling arms. "A son," Olivia whispered, tears streaming down her face as she gazed at the tiny being they had created together. "Isaac, we have a son." Isaac, his own cheeks wet with emotion, perched carefully on the edge of the bed, one arm around his exhausted wife, the other hand gently stroking his son's downy head. "He's magnificent, like his mother." Later that evening, after Olivia had rested and the baby had been properly bathed and swaddled, Alina was permitted a brief visit to meet her nephew. "He looks like Isaac did as an infant," she declared, cradling Thomas with the natural ease of someone born to nurture. "Though I see your chin, Olivia, and perhaps your nose." "Poor child," Olivia joked weakly, still recovering from her ordeal but determined to savor these precious first moments of her son's life. "Nonsense," Isaac contradicted, his pride evident in every line of his face. "He's the perfect combination of us both, and the perfect beginning to the new year." In the weeks that followed, as Olivia adjusted to motherhood with the support of Isaac, Alina, and Mrs. Hanson, she often reflected on the strange and wonderful path that had led her to this point. If someone had told her 2 years earlier that she, the spinster milliner deemed too old for marriage byGunnison's gossips, would become wife to the town's wealthiest rancher and mother to his son before she turned 34, she would have dismissed the notion as fantasy. Yet here she was, rocking her son in the conservatory Isaac had built, sunlight streaming through the glass walls to warm them both as snowdrifts piled against the exterior. Behind her, the main house hummed with the activity of a well-run household. Beyond the windows, Redemption Ranch sprawled in pristine winter beauty, a legacy they would one day pass to Thomas and perhaps other children yet to come. "Happy?" Isaac asked, finding her there after attending to ranch business with his foreman. Olivia looked up at her husband, his face more dear to her now than she could have imagined possible when they first met, and then down at their sleeping son, his tiny features peaceful in slumber. "Perfectly," she replied, reaching for Isaac's hand. "Like fine wine."